So we agree. 2 weeks of the standard prep time. And the winner can make the loser do one thing for them without any comments or any complaining. Agreed. And let's waste no more time. We'll see you on the field of battle. And finally put an end to this family feud.
And when he said we're playing by the street rules, I decided, okay, game on, and lifted up the entire street.
Rehash, what are you doing here? Jenna's gonna be throwing hands with Yakko!
Oh my goodness, you're right! A SmackDown like that deserves to be in-person front row seats! So, when and where's the death battle?
Come on, I wanna see some blood!
At least let me sell tickets.
Oh my god, we are not fighting to the death. I don't particularly like my siblings, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna Mortal Kombat them.
So when should we expect the Coliseum map?
Again, I am not fighting Yakko that way.
Then how are you going to fight him?
There's a secret, ancient, lost art of the Warner Brothers that have been passed down from generation to generation. Ancient trials of skill, strategy, strength, endurance, and combat. One that has been used to settle differences between the Warner Brothers and their properties for generations upon generations. And that's what we're going to do. Well, how me and Yakko are going to solve our differences? We're going to do a Space Jam.
Oh, say less!
This is Animaniacs 2020!
This episode of the Animaniacs decides to take a cue from the hit novel Oliver Twist, where we see an orphanage run by Pinky and the Brain.
Huh. That's nice.
Wait, is this a Pinky and the Brain episode?
No, I don't think it is. The two of them are still on their world domination shtick, but they're playing the roles of the orphanage owners. And for whatever reason, Pinky is playing the role of the wife. No, there is our little wacky Warners, where it's Wacko who's playing the part of Oliver. And his famous line, "Can I have some more?" Yakko plays it off as if he's obsessed with gruel, so much so that he actively starts singing a song about how much he loves the gruel.
I know the Animaniacs were pretty famous for their out there songs, but gruel?
Actually, that is the perfect segue to something I wanted to bring up. Now, I do love me a good TV show song. Some of the best songs, in fact, I've ever listened to did come from Broadway musicals and television shows. And the Animaniacs themselves are no stranger to a really good musical number. Which forces me to have to ask, what the hell am I listening to when it comes to these new songs of this new generation of the Warners? The Warners themselves, without question, have proven that they can sing, but the songs that they are given aren't exactly going on my playlist. The songs themselves were good when they were in their original series. But since then, we've had countless cartoons with countless musical numbers, from Steven Universe to Has Been Hotel, My Little Pony. I'm not about to exactly put a song about gruel between my songs like Gravity, Brighter, Stronger Than You, or Winter Wrap-Up, if you catch my drift. So, like in the original Oliver Twist, he gets kicked out of the orphanage. So the Warners decide to hitch a ride all the way into town to see if they can find a place to take care of them until they get back on their feet. One trail leads to another, and then they find the evil lair of Dr. Scratch and Sniff. Say what you will, I'm just happy that they're finally utilizing him more.
Well, they waste no time trying to finesse the doctor into giving them some of his gruel. But he makes it clear that if you want gruel, you have to work for him. And what services could they possibly provide? They mention that they can sing, and he decides to sing his own song about how he can use their singing talents in order to trick the public so his orphans can steal from the rich.
Pickpocket. marketing, but we're chaotic good. It would go against our whole character alignment.
No you don't. You've done way too much bullshit against innocent people this season and last season to ever classify yourselves as chaotic good. You are chaotic neutral at best. If you really want a good example of chaotic good, just look at Citrus Girl here. She may be a little wild and causes a lot of property damage, but she always tries to save as many lives as she can while stopping the bad guys. You, however, keep following your own self-interests and chaotic tendencies on a whim. The only time we've actually seen you do anything good for anyone is when you had your own self-interest and are getting something out of it. In short, neutrality.
Well, despite knowing that this man is an evil, crooked man, despite knowing that signing that contract will mean that they are selling their souls to a criminal organization, knowing full well that they are going to be actively committing crimes or abating in committing the crimes, they sign away in order to get Wacko his nom-noms.
And that was part 1 of this weird 2-parter that they're going for. Yeah, for this episode they're going for this weird 2-parter phenomena, which I suppose is nice and quirky, but it's a little strange. It's a little strange, especially at the very end, since part 2 is immediately after the Pinky and the Brain segment. So I guess we can reserve full judgment until the very end. So with that being said, here's the Pinky and the Brain. The episode begins with Pinky reading a book about toxic friendships, while Brain is currently performing weird science on that weird fat rat that keeps showing up every now and again, transforming him into a massive rage-filled hulking monster for a short while.
Apparently, Brain has invented a aggression ray, which massively increases the aggressive and hate-filled tendencies of its target, hoping to use it on Pinky in order to turn him into a more competent ally. I'm pretty sure he tried this in the original series, so let's see how the new series is able to adapt such a situation.
Yeah, whether it was in the old Animaniacs or in the old Pinky and the Brain, there's one consistent theme when it comes to Pinky becoming competent. It's that whenever Brain lets Pinky take the wheel on any plan, it auto-succeeds without fail, 100% of the time. You know, Citrus, maybe you should just keep Brain off of your list and focus on Pinky, because if he decides he ever wants to take over the world, he can do it, easily.
So Brain pulls off his experiment to make Pinky more aggressive, and it works. Sort of. It only affects his hands. His hands gain a sentience and a mind of their own, and they are very aggressive, very passionate, and they really know how to kick ass.
Is anybody else reminded of that one horror film where the guy gets his hand cut off and gets replaced with a hand of a serial killer, and now that serial killer hand is going around murdering people? I feel like somebody watched that concept and put it in Pinky and the Brain. So, without thinking of the consequences, Brain immediately puts the hands to work by listing off a series of his plans that he wants help with. But whenever he says something stupid, the hands give their disagreements. That is until he suggests a plan involving a bioweapon with a mosquito, and the hands approve. And so, they make their unholy alliance. Unfortunately, just because they have the same goal doesn't mean they have the same motive. Brain wants world domination, but we don't entirely know what the hands want.
And so the game is afoot to get that bioweapon. So they head to the Institution of Health in order to get the bioweapon and a mosquito, using the mosquito as a transportation system for the supervirus.
Oh dear God, he's going to spread COVID again!
Honestly, I think this is more Black Plague than COVID, but regardless, the hands are 100% on top of everything. And when I do say everything, I mean everything. Every time Brain has a plan to get in, the hands are one step ahead of him and doing pretty much the entire job, kicking ass, taking names, and pretty much doing all the hard lifting. Brain literally just sits on the sidelines while they do all the work accessing the access code, getting the virus, mutating the insect, and then the inevitable betrayal.
Oh, who could have seen that coming?
The evil, aggressive hands are betraying their creator.
Citrus Girl?
I know he's evil villainy right now, but that doesn't mean you should.
Run, everybody run!
Don't you
Stop
they don't actually hurt, but they make you taste lemon for hours!
So Pinky's hands take the bug and the toxin and leave Brain for dead. But Brain is nothing but resourceful. So he manages to make an escape, but the hands are always one step ahead of him as they go into a helicopter and fly away. But Brain manages to get on board. The hands do everything in their power to try to shake Brain off, but Brain does have one ally, Pinky himself, who fights his own hands, but because, they're his own hands, they can't pilot the helicopter and they crash into the ground, leaving Pinky dead as a doornail.
Of course they don't actually kill him off. That would be insane. But it seems as though Pinky got a nice big conk on the noggin, which seems to have reset his brain, and his hands are no longer have a mind of their own.
A bit of a cop-out, but whatever. A more clever writing would definitely have the hands be lying in dormant until much later down the line. But this isn't exactly Shakespeare. So with that,
they prepare for tomorrow night as they try to take over the world.
Also, that mosquito, yeah, that's gonna be a left-off plot hook.
The Animaniacs reboot was supposed to be the Pinky and the Brain reboot, and you cannot convince me otherwise. But with that being said, while this episode was entertaining, it did follow a very stock plot when it comes to Pinky and the Brain, which fundamentally boils down to Pinky is significantly more competent at taking over the world than Brain is. Though this one did play with the formula just a tad. But regardless, I don't think this episode was bad. In fact, I would even be saying mildly amused. But with that being said, there are much better Pinky and the Brain episodes that take the concept way more seriously and way more amusing directions. If you really want an episode of Pinky and the Brain that's similar to this, look up the episode where Brain lets Pinky be in charge of the plan, and he goes from owning a clam petting zoo to becoming Secretary of Defense.
So we cut back to the Oliver Twist Part 2 parody, where the Warners go into the street in order to distract everybody so that the orphans can take their wallets, by singing yet another version of Yakko's World. Look, I love Yakko's World as much as the next tune, but you reference it so often, so many times. Move on. There are plenty of other songs you can sing that isn't Yakko's World.
Okay, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here and say, yes, they do reference Yakko's World a lot. But what song alternative do they have? This is the episode where we got the Gruel song.
Point taken.
Let's compromise and just get rid of the songs entirely.
Well, while singing, they collect handout coins, but in the meantime, the other orphans go behind everybody's back and steal their wallets. Meaning, technically, the Warners, their hands are clean, mostly. But unfortunately, they're met with unfavorable rewards for all their efforts and hard work, with getting a little gold coin and gruel. And the gold coin isn't even real, it's a counterfeit. Well, the Warners immediately call bullshit because this is clearly unfair treatment. And this segues into another song about how they have no actual rights when working for him. Okay, I'm gonna level with you, my gents. On one hand, I don't particularly like the heavy-handed message that they're going to be giving, which of course is going to be about a massive allegory for corrupt capitalism. That is just not what I want in my cartoons. However, This does follow the formula of Animaniacs really well. And genuinely, I am being overly critical, but I actually am enjoying this a little bit. Though there are a little bit too many songs. So we get yet another song about the heavy-handed message of the episode. Corrupt capitalism is bad.
The song is very well sung, but it's not very memorable, and I'll probably forget it after this episode. But then Wacko asks why do the other orphans get more gruel than he does? And Dr. Scratchstiff simply says, because they're salary and you're a freelancer. Wacko wants to be put on salary, so he offers him the chance and has the orphans show him the ropes. Of course, this means he's going to be the one doing the actual pickpocketing, while his siblings sing their merry tune. But his first score, he ends up getting caught, and the orphans immediately throw him and the other Warners under the bus.
Oh look, Ralph, we haven't seen him in a while.
Well, the Warners are arrested and are sentenced to several years in prison and hard labor for their crimes. Yakko tries to bribe the judge, which extends their sentence, but when pointing out that the gold coin that he pays the guard with is a counterfeit, and the guy who counterfeited is in the courtroom, he ends up taking the fall instead.
The Warner Bros. CEO lady comes up and apologizes for, well, she really doesn't have anything to apologize for. They pickpocketed her. But I guess because they're victims, she is apologetic and immediately regrets her decision because they're talking about, you are going to adopt us. Do not resist. And the episode ends with...
Parliament will crumble like an overflowered Scottish shortbread. Onwards, vile orphans, onwards!
Wow, maybe we should have stuck with that storyline.
Yeah, looks way more interesting than our heavy-handed treatment of workers' rights.
You know, I kind of wish you followed that storyline too. I mean, push come to shove, Pinky and the Brain has been hard carrying the Animaniacs for 2 seasons now, and I have no reason to believe that they aren't going to carry you in season 3.
Honestly, this show is beginning to remind me why not every cartoon deserves to be a musical. Just because you have musical talent and a wide variety of different songs doesn't mean they're all going to be a hit. In fact, the more songs you put in, the bigger likelihood that they're not going to be as good as what you would do if you had time and energy prepping the work. I'll take any Has-Been Hotel song or My Little Pony song or even Steven Universe over anything the Animaniacs has done in these last 2 years.
Hey, does anybody remember when the Animaniacs actually did stuff? You know, they actually behaved like cartoon characters? Yakko could use his wit, Wacko could use his exaggerated mallet, and Dot can actually, be aggressive? I feel like a lot of the Animaniacs' original personality was kind of lost. How come they're not allowed to do anything anymore?
Well, only time will be able to speculate if the Warners are going to actually be able to do anything anymore, or if they've been officially neutered and can only react to the cartoonish situations they find themselves in. So with that being said, I'm Gent, I'm Rehash,
I'm Decipher,
and this is Citrus Girl. And we're the Cartoon Gentlemen. We brought you organized chaos, and we will see you all next time.